Hello everybody. Welcome to the BAMEOTUK UK podcast for Black History Month 2025. We've got a special guest for you, Phil Chiza. And before we start and I introduce you to my special guest, I'm just going to remind us that Black History Month is the recognition and acknowledgement that we should extend beyond a designated time frame. The prevalence of institutional racism in various sectors like education, healthcare, justice, and politics persists, requiring continuous efforts for meaningful, impactful, and sustainable actionable change. And Black History Month serves as a platform to honour the significant contributions of Black individuals, enhance awareness of Black history and culture, and confront the lack of representation in mainstream spaces. It stands as a moment to appreciate the accomplishments of Black pioneers and peers and society in general, tackling the persisting disparities and cultivate solidarity across all communities. So welcome, Phil. I guess I'd like to start with asking you to introduce yourself, and then we'll carry on with our conversation for this podcast.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here, to be quite honest. It's something that I was involved a few years ago actually with BAMEOTUK UK. I attended a few online sessions, especially
Lovely.
around George Floyd murder and around that time when most organizations started to think around race and racism and the
Mhm.
disparities that we have in organizations. Yeah, so back then, so I've been an occupational therapist since 2002. So it's been quite a number of years now. I qualified abroad back in Zimbabwe, and I came here in the UK
Amazing.
in 2004. So I've been here for quite a number of years now, doing various occupational therapy roles in the NHS, in the local authority, and in the private sector. So now I'm with Essex County Council as a local authority, as you can see from my background. So I'm proud to be a black man or male OT in this space, and I've got something that I need to hopefully going to contribute to the profession and to share with you today.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. And yes, social services and occupational therapy, I think, is underrepresented really in the literature and in the promotion. And you're one of the rarities in that you're a black man in occupational therapy. So we're very privileged to have you here today representing. I'd like to sort of think about really in your work, how do you think that representation and also how do you develop and deliver around justice-based therapy and really the equity piece that you do within your workspace?
Yeah, I think that's quite an important piece and quite an important area because what matters for me or in this space is to bring what you call your authentic self, being able to share my lived experience. Because when I got involved in this role that I'm going to talk about later, it's about using my lived experience, migrating from one part of the world to the other, and how then does it affect uh, my practice or our practice in the occupational therapy space? What does occupation mean in various environments? And what does occupation mean when you're from a minoritized background? And yeah, hopefully, being able to apply some of the knowledge that I've gained in the past. So I tend to use what I've done in the past. For example, I've done postgrad training around, so I've got a master's in public health, looking at multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis, especially how it affects migrant communities. So being
Mm.
able to use my lived experience and to understand what those communities are going through. So that was number one. And then the second one was applying project management skills. Again, is something that I I've got skilled in. I've got another master's in project management. So I focused and looked at poor housing conditions and the way people who are applying or going through the disabled facilities grant, for example, how they can be marginalized and how poor housing conditions can affect individuals that we work with. So applying those two and using my lived experience, just to answer you in terms of how then can we apply the justice to the people that we are working with, occupational justice, but being able to use yourself in that space,
Mm.
that common phrase, therapeutic use of self in occupational
Mm.
therapy, and then applying it to the people that we work with.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. So how many degrees have you done then?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
I've got the BSc in occupational therapy and then the two masters in public health and in project management. But they're all sort of linked in terms of
Yeah.
how how I can make a difference in supporting those marginalized communities. Sometimes that we struggle to support, especially we don't apply that anti-racist lens in whatever we are doing.
And I guess that leads on to why should we in occupational therapy across the piece, across our peers, doesn't matter what racialization, why do you think we should be involved in this anti-racism work? You said something about um, helping to reduce those disparities, but why is it important for us as occupational therapists to be doing the work and maybe leading the work?
Yes, the question of why is very, very important, especially when we talk about race and racism. Actually, I was reading a recent report by the Health Foundation and I think Runnymede Trust saying racism as a health determinant. So it affects the building blocks of health. It cuts
Mm.
across housing, employment, wealth. Black, Asian, and minoritized ethnic people face poor housing conditions, higher rates of respiratory illness, as I mentioned earlier, and they've got greater exposure to stress and mental health issues. So it's
Mm.
important for us to understand these societal issues and
Mm.
and how we can then advocate for our the people that we work with in
Mm.
terms of co-production and coming up with the solutions that that are tailored to them and understanding the environment as occupational therapists we look at the person
Mm.
being at the center, but also we need to consider the environment that they live in. It's really, really important that as occupational therapy professionals lead in this space
Mm.
because of our understanding of that, holistic approach to, um, offering solutions.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's quite powerful actually. We're in such an advantage space, aren't we, with our
Mm,
training and with our understanding of how environment
mm,
can affect health and well-being and how changing the environment, because we work from outside in
mm,
to help people recover, retrain, get on with their everyday lives. And I think that that piece you're talking about, that environment, is so important, because environment, isn't it? It's not just physical environment, it's family culture, it's institutional environment, and it's the services as well, how they're organised, isn't it, to
Mm,
serve their communities and
mm,
help their communities. And the
mm,
thing you said about knowing that the data saying that minoritized people, their not only physical health is affected, but their mental well-being is affected as well. So it seems incumbent on us as occupational therapists, doesn't it, to
mm,
be involved in anti-racism work. And I'm
mm.
and I'm just thinking, if you could kind of provide an example of an activity or a daily practice that you're engaged with that is delivering anti-racism occupational therapy practice.
I can pick on a number of examples in terms of what we can do or what I'm doing. It's funny that you asked that question. There was a news report I was listening to only a few days ago, 3 days ago. The Royal College of Nursing. It talked about the surge in racist abuse. 55% increase in racist incidents reported by our colleagues in the nursing profession.
Mm,
Um, so in occupational therapy, I'm not so sure whether we're at that level to gather that information and that insight and that data. Maybe it's there somewhere. I'm not aware of it. But what I want to say is that we need to look at as an occupational therapist, the work that I'm involved in, the journeys that we take when we are in the workplace. So for me, the thing that I really are quite passionate about is about
mm,
progression, in terms of how are we progressing in the work in our workplaces.
mm,
Because it does mean quite a lot in terms of influence, using your skills and influence to make the workplace is a better place, but also
mm,
it also affects the practice. So one piece of work I led on and I'm constantly leading on is around the recruitment, to making sure that we've got
yeah.
inclusive recruitment panels. Most organizations they question why do you need to diversify the panel? Why is it important? But you touched a piece on culture, the way sometimes we express ourselves when we attend for interviews and looking at some of the biases that you're faced with, from a minoritized background. So it's that's really important because it it sets the tone in terms of who you are as an organization. What image are you portraying outside there to your prospective, candidates, but also looking at the present workforce in terms of understanding inclusive behaviors and cultures. So that has been quite a significant sort of change and step in terms of showing the people that are applying, especially newly qualified occupational therapists, how can we sort of support them and understand them, looking at their journey, but also the current workforce in terms of our language and culture and practice. So recruitment and progression, I would say those are the cornerstone in terms of having that anti-racist lens in terms of what we can do.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, to enable sort of that justice piece in practice, one of the components is around recruitment
Mhm.
and getting that diversity of staff in the workplace, but also not just getting them in, but how do we look after them and enable them to progress in their careers? Because we know that data does say that there's a ceiling, isn't there?
Yeah,
In that
yeah,
the lowest paid banding, you find
yeah,
a bigger part of the minoritized groups in, and as you get higher up, it becomes less and less presented. I mean, like Roger Klein says in
yeah.
his report, snowy white peaks, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And that seems to be still the case, even though there has been some change in that people coming for interview, there's been an increase in diversity, but once they're in, they don't seem to progress at the same pace as their white peers. So that is still here. And I think your work is really important for that justice piece, isn't it? So that you can bring it into practice and the people you serve can see a diversity, regardless of whether the population in the local community is majority white.
Mm-hmm.
It's about them seeing that there are other people who can do the job as well. And it creates that kind of cross-fertilization of not only culture and acceptance, but also that anybody can be your professional. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Anybody who's qualified can be the professional that is going to help you. I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
is coming through in what you're saying about your work. But how did you get into doing this kind of project, looking at recruitment and career progression? How did you kind of navigate into this project
Yeah.
role?
Yeah, I mean, I always get asked that question, and it started back in 2021, around October time. So around this time, I've been reading reports, for example, that Roger Klein report, and talking to colleagues, and I was part of the BAMEOTUK as well, listening to what research is saying. Um, And then there was a call out by our leadership team, the other leadership team, to say we want to look into the issues to do with our workforce, especially from EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion lens. But we need to start off with race, because there have been so many reports coming out around, the racial disparities that we were facing as an organization. So there was a video which came out, all of them, I think there were about 8 of them, they were all white, talking about, you want to, I said, I don't see myself being represented there. So if I don't step forward, and share my, as I said, my lived experience, then no one is going to know my story. And just before that, I've been trying to progress in my organization. As I said, I qualified back in 2002, and that glass ceiling effect, to the extent that there was one day where I turned up for an interview, and the person who opened the door to interview me was someone that I'd been supervising, and, so she progressed faster than me. And the very question that stuck with me was, Phil, where have you been? So she was saying, why am I interviewing you? It should be the other way around. So I thought I need to do something about it. So there was a program called Quest. It's still running at the moment. So we're looking at what are the issues affecting our colleagues, but most importantly, it's not about coming up with the stats and exposing what's there, but it's about us coming up with that solution. So I got involved with that, came up with a 10-point plan in terms of what we need to do, presented to the leadership team, to the political leadership team, and clearly map out what's supposed to be done around recruitment, around our language and culture, around progression, as I mentioned earlier on, around health, safety, and well-being. For example, the practice, if you go out there as a worker and then you're racially abused, how do we respond to that? So it's something that has been then evolving since then, 2021. So I got seconded to do that role from my official occupational therapy deputy team manager role to do that kind of work. So I've been doing it ever since, and it's been amazing to say the least because of I think some of the work that I've been doing to change our strategy, our practice, and yeah, the general well-being, and also looking at especially the people coming through, newly qualified workers or qualified social workers, and occupational therapists. What is it that we can do in this space so that we understand their needs, but also being able to respond to some of the issues that they're facing.
That's that's really quite amazing that there's a project like that that is going to help really not just help minoritized people, it will uplift everybody. Because if you get it right, you're tackling really the knotty problems across the board, isn't it? Not just bias in racism, but bias in ableism or LGBTQIA+. So, and I think that that's the important point to share is that anti-racism work will benefit everybody if we get it right.
Mm.
That I truly believe that. And because the good stuff that you're doing at your workplace is going to be kind of for everybody in the end, for everybody. That's so amazing that you're able to have that position to be able to lead this work. And I guess for your workplace and your managers to support you. But are you alone in doing this work, or do you have people who are working with you?
So when it started, as I said, the organization was looking for volunteers to come out of the day job, and I was the occupational therapist, so it was seven of us. It was cutting across the workforce, social workers, community support workers, people in commissioning. So the seven of us formed that core group in terms of looking at the data, listening to the lived experience. But what's really key that I want to emphasize is, having leadership buy-in. So I can safely say I'm not alone. I know I've got the support of my leaders who are what we can term allies in this space. So it's important to have allies, but also it's essential to understand that racism is about power. So having that access to power, being able to bypass those structures, for example, to highlight some of the structural issues that we have in organizations. So I got involved again in a pilot around reciprocal mentoring with our DAS within the organization. So it's about sharing ideas, meeting informally or formally, talking, honestly about what's happening. So that's really key in that. So you can't do this on your own. You need to have that leadership buy-in, but also and working with employee forums. For example, we've got what we call Eden, employee network, like we've got the BAM networks, or the Eden net. But that piece, as you mentioned, around cross-fertilization, understanding the wider issues to do with allyship, it's really key as well in this space because we talk about LGBTQ allies, age allies, disability allies. Yeah, so there's a program that I help deliver with the EDI lead around allyship. So yeah, training again is a big piece that you need to be thinking about when you're doing this kind of work.
I'm going to summarize a little bit. So, to do anti-racism occupational therapy practice, you came through sort of thinking about the people who are delivering it, how do we get them into the profession, and then how do we help them progress in the profession? And that is the justice piece that you're bringing to occupational therapy practice. But you also just now have talked about power in the room. So you do need the support of people higher up who do hold the resources and the purse strings and are able to support the driving of such an initiative, but also having the networks of the different communities and groups as well to support this. And that's the way you're kind of driving it down to the shop floor so that it can be seen and felt by everybody. That's kind of my summary of what you have been discussing. And I'm thinking on that note, really, what does the future hold for Phil Chiza now?
It's a question that I've constantly asked myself. Because what happened when I got into this role, it was supposed to be a 1 year secondment. And as you know, it's been about 4 years now, I can say. So the secondment is constantly being extended because of the amount of work that needs to be done, especially around that culture piece. Was initially, as I said, it was looking at the workforce, how we can support our work colleagues. But then it got the scope, then got extended to the practice in terms of how we do this work around the practice, the culture, especially the culture, which is more important for occupational therapists. The activities that we prescribe, are they culturally sensitive? Are we thinking? Are we engaging the people that we work with to that level? Listening to what they're saying. So in terms of the future for me, I think it's constantly looking at making more sort of strategic leadership responsibilities, and contributing to policy change. It's quite a big piece. As you know, in this space, there can be a lot more resistance because culture can be difficult to change. So constantly working on how do we improve our our the workplace culture, looking at our policies, applying that anti-racist lens and inclusive practice across the services. And the second item that I want to be involved in is around, being a mentor, especially to occupational therapy colleagues. Because as I said, as a black man, I'm a minority and working in social care, OTs, people don't really know much, but so imagine, being an OT and being black, but also being male. So I want to be a mentor in terms of how I can, help um, foster that resilience, but to say, you can smash that glass ceiling. So, and also thinking about the system-wide change, because as I said, when I was doing public health, you can see how it affects public health. You can see how it affects system-wide change. What system-wide working that we have with our NHS colleagues, with our housing colleagues, or with voluntary organizations, and especially in mental health. There are a lot of reports around issues to do with mental health for Black men, and being subjected to, being sectioned disproportionately. So it's something that I'm thinking about. We're quite privileged as occupational therapists that we can work across the divide around health and social care. And so it's about having that system-wide lens for me, looking at regional collaboration and national policy work. So my next step is working with our courts, and see if I can, if we can influence the policy and practice at that level. So it's quite ambitious, but I think it can be done.
Oh, we have to have ambition if we're going to move forward, haven't we? And I think the great thing is that you've not just done education or done just discussions. Actually, it is interaction, and that's where the transformation happens, really, in the actions that are carried out within this justice space, and that's very important. So, Phil, before we end this, really quite, I could speak to you for longer. It's fascinating. I was just thinking, what do you have to say to our occupational therapy community in relation to anti-racism and justice work in occupational therapy? What golden nugget of advice would you give them?
So I would say number one, have belief, in yourself that you can do it. Have role models, some people that you can look up to, because it can be tough, it can be hard in this space. But also be clear in terms of using your lived experience, because that really counts when you want to draw attention and people listening to you, because justice work, it's about not only looking at the data, the numbers, but also the stories, because the stories that people have and that people go through are so much important in our practice, in education, and in us as a people. Was before we started writing, we were sharing stories. So those stories, those narratives, use them. Then you'll be able to influence the people that hold the positions of power. Because once you've got that on your side, you'll be able to influence that change. So I would say keep pushing, like what my year two professor used to say, the only constant thing in life is change. So change is inevitable, and it's ongoing. So I would say have that belief, use that lived experience, and continue pushing boundaries.
Lovely, lovely. And I'll probably end with you reminding me of Professor Maya Angelou's quote about, when we know better, we should then do better, right? And I think those stories and the data, they're all about knowing better. So now it's time for occupational therapy to really do much, much better. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.